Hey everyone, so welcome to my very first episode of Mamahood Mondays. And a few weeks ago, I was thinking about some parenting experiences I was having, and I shared them on the feed. And I had so much feedback of women wanting to talk about mama stuff. And my account has always been strictly DIY projects. But I thought, oh, maybe it's time to start bringing in a little bit of mamahood talk. So I decided to start this IGTV series for just a few of you mamas who maybe want to talk and learn and grow together. And so today, for my first time sharing a Mamahood Monday, I'm going to share my little story of being a mama over the last 22 years, which condensing 22 years into 10-15 minutes is going to be fun, but very, very just simple and focused. And then I would love for you guys to share your story in the comments of who you are and what your mamahood journey is. And then each week I'll be kind of attacking different things that people have asked me about. And then if I don't know all those type of answers, like if it's not something I've experienced, I thought it was something that we could learn from each other in the comments. And that's why the IGTV series is so great, because we can keep it permanently versus a story, and then everyone can comment and learn from each other and what they're reading. So first up, when I left to college and went to Rick's College at BYU, Idaho, and I met my husband the very first day I was there. We didn't get married for 3 more years, though we were 18, and he served a mission for our faith, and when he got home, we got married at 21. And 5 months into our marriage, we got pregnant with our first baby. And I had started my career as a 7th grade school counselor, and I had graduated in social work and was starting my master's degree in educational counseling. And I'd always wanted a family. I grew up with 6 brothers, no sisters. Both of my parents had huge families. And I always knew I wanted that, but I didn't know if I was really quite ready to do that at age 21. So had my baby, continued to work. He was getting babysat every day, and I was going to graduate school at night. And after a few months, I realized, like, for whatever reason, I could not hack that. It was so much emotional work for me. And I just decided, I'm going to go home and be a stay-at-home mom for a little while. And that was a really hard transition for me. I was super emotional about it and shed lots of tears because I had also wanted to go change the world, right? And I was so excited to land this job in Provo at Centennial Middle School as a 7th grade school counselor, and I was loving it. But Mike and I decided that would be our journey for then. So we had our first baby at 22, and after working for a bit, I stopped and stayed home with him, and have stayed home since then with my family. Into the last few years, I've started working from home again with my design decor account. So right after that, our baby was 6 months old. His name was Mikey, and Mike was applying for law school, and taking the LSAT and going to law school. And everywhere we visited, they were like, you can never have a kid in law school. It's way too hard. And we realized we better have a child before law school and take this break during law school. And so we did. When our first baby was 6 months old, we got pregnant with our next baby, Dallin. And so we have 2 boys that are 18 months apart and 16 months apart. Actually, they're 16 months apart, and they're very close in age. I felt like I had little twins, and that was a season of my life that was awesome, but it was also really, really hard. I shed lots of tears because we lived in Utah. All of my family lived in California. Mike's family lived in Montana, and I felt super alone. And there was no social media outlets at that time where you could get on and discuss things with other women. And so I felt like I did a lot of it on my own. It was kind of a hard, lonely time, but it was also a really bonding time for me and my husband. And so Mike would go to law school all day long, and he'd come home like at midnight, and we would start over again for years. For 3 years we did that. And anyway, that's another story that we'll get into, but that is kind of like my journey with the babies. So then after that, we decided to have another child when law school is over, and it took us a lot longer than I planned. And we are confident that in between that time, I actually had a miscarriage, but I didn't even know I was expecting when I had the miscarriage. And so it wasn't a traumatic miscarriage, where I know I have so many close friends who have been through such intense traumatic experiences with their miscarriages. And so I'm very careful to say that because it wasn't something that I even understood was happening at the time. But it took us a while to get pregnant with our next kid, Joey. And once again, a while, I'm very careful with saying that because I've also had many dear friends who cannot have children or took many, many years and many, many miscarriages to get there. So we just had a 4-year break between Dallin and when Joey was born. And we had him, and then about 2 years later, we had another little girl that was born and another kid that was born, which was our baby girl. So we have 4 kids, and we have them the bigs and the littles, and that's kind of what we call them. And throughout that time, we've moved 8 times. We've had many different businesses, lots of different experiences. We've had so many ups and so many downs, and I'm so grateful for the journey to be on of motherhood. I've had a lot of amazing moments where I felt so much joy, and I've had a lot of really dark moments where there was heavy days I felt like I was not the person for the job. And now those are topics that maybe we will get into over this series. They're a little bit heavier and a little bit harder. I've suffered severe postpartum depression, particularly after my 4th kid. And that's kind of a bigger, heavy story that was really, really difficult for me. I suffered postpartum after my 1st baby, but not as intensely as after the 4th baby. We actually needed to get some help for that. And so that'll be something that we can discuss if that's something that people would like to discuss as we go throughout this mamahood journey. Something I would love to say right off the bat, I have learned that things eventually work out. No matter how hard it is, no matter what heaviness that you are going through, when you hang on and you stick with it, those things eventually work out. And I look back on so many of the phases of being a mom that were so heavy and so dark and so exhausting. And now they're just like this blink because I got through, and then things became good again. And then we went through, and you go through these dips and valleys, and it continues to work out. You just have to really hang on, right? I was talking with one of my adult children who was struggling with something recently, and he's like, I don't like this. I want to be done. I'm like, there's so many times as a mama that you feel that. You're like, I'm done. I'm tapping out. I don't know what I'm doing. No one's listening to me. I absolutely feel like I have no resources. I'm not fit for this job, and I want to be done. And then you go to bed in tears, and then you wake up like ready to go again. And sometimes those days last a lot longer than 24 hours. But you just hang on and you stick with it and you do your best, and things work out and the joy comes. There's also so many times I've experienced such the most intense amount of joy that I never thought. And one of the first questions I got asked a few weeks ago or last week when I talked about Mamahood Mondays is, I have 1 kid and I love that kid so much. I cannot imagine having another kid because I'm so worried I will not be able to love the 2nd kid as much as I love the 1st kid. And I don't know if any of you had those feelings, but I did. I was so absolutely infatuated with my 1st son that when we decided to have another one, I genuinely thought there's no way my heart can eat up another child as much as I can eat up this child. And I was genuinely worried about that. So when I got that message, I was like, oh, I know that feeling. And then you have that moment where that child is born and you don't know how to explain it, but your heart just does this and it just grows, and you immediately don't know how it works, but you love that other child just as much as you love that first child. And then your heart just keeps growing and growing with each one that comes into your little fold. And so I know that for sure, that your mama hearts can grow and encompass the love that you need to take care of your babies and your family. So that is like a little nugget of my story. It's kind of my start. And now I'm in the phase where I've done the very babies and lots of kids in diapers, and I never thought that I would go anywhere in public again without a spit up stain on my clothes and a diaper bag that was enormous. And then we got to the phase where kids started to attend school and I was down to little diaper bags, and I couldn't believe that I could actually get out of the house within a half an hour. And then I started having a babysitter phase where my oldest was there to be able to watch the youngers and be helpful. And I was like, I've arrived. This is so easy and so amazing. And then you hit the phase of teenagers where you start having drivers and you have all of this assistance, and you can't believe how much easier it's getting physically. But I did learn that as the younger phases happened, that was definitely much more physically hard for me, exhausting, tired, you can't keep up. And then as they've gotten older, and mainly that all of mine are graduated or in high school and junior high now, it's a lot more emotionally taxing because physically it's not as hard anymore. Everybody's maintaining themselves, but emotionally the worry that you feel about what they may or may not be doing or what their life choices are going to be can really weigh on you. And so we got a lot of questions about how do you deal with kids moving out? How do you do that let go part? How do you deal with fighting? And so those are things I want to start talking about and just sharing the little tips and tricks that I know. And then hopefully whatever we're talking about that day in that section of the comments, everyone else can share their tips and tricks. And then these will just last forever on IGTV. And so it could be an ever going, ongoing dialogue of mamahood. So with that, welcome to Kelly Ballard, City Girl Meets Farm Boy, Mamahood Mondays, episode 1. Introduce you and your story in the comments, whatever time that you read this, because it will be on the platform forever after. And then we'll just keep learning and growing from each other. And next week, I think I'm going to address a little bit about a lot of the questions I got was fighting and how do you deal with fighting. And so that's going to be episode 2, is a little bit of how to deal with fighting. And I hope you come with your ideas of what you're dealing with your kiddos and things that are working for you. And I will share that worked for me. And hopefully that will give some of you some inspiration of how to handle it yourselves with your family. Anyway, hope you have the best day.